Hey preacher, how are you doing with your illustrations? Now, maybe you're one who doesn't use illustrations, or maybe you're one who uses way too many and you don't know why you use them and you use them for the wrong reasons in the wrong places. Or maybe you don't believe in illustrations, or maybe you just, like many preachers, don't know a lot about them and you just need a little bit of help. Well, I'm Bryan Catherman with SaltyBeliever.com, and I think I have a little bit of help for you. This is a new book just published. It's called Illustrating Well, Preaching Sermons That Connect by Jim Willson. It's published by Lexham Press. It's about 186 or so pages, and it's easy, it's accessible, and it's really helpful, actually. Now, I need to put up front, I received this copy for free because I was in a doctoral seminar taught by Jim Willson as he was working on this book and working through it. And so part of the curriculum was to read the book before it was published in an early manuscript form. It was incredibly helpful. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and now that I'm just loving that it's available for preachers now. Here's the breakdown. Let's just talk through that just a little bit. In the table of contents, it's a book that comes in two parts. The first part is the theoretical pieces of illustration. And you know, I think sometimes we go through a preaching class and we don't think too much about this, but Jim goes into 4 metaphors for sermon illustrations, and that's the bridge, the light, the window, and the picture. And this might sound a little bit familiar. Some of this stuff comes from Spurgeon and many other preachers. He's consolidated their approach, where those individuals might have thought one thing. He said, look, there's really kind of 4 big ways that a sermon illustration is used effectively in a sermon. And then he has 4 characteristics of effective sermon illustrations: illustration, location, and sermon structure. And it says using sermon illustrations effectively. I would say, in a way, this is kind of the big 30,000-foot view and how to go about sermon illustrations. Now, a lot of us, we just kind of stick them in there willy-nilly. We're not quite sure what they're doing. Maybe you've had a class, or you've read, a great preaching book about illustrations, and some people say, well, this is to explain, and this is to motivate, and this is to do this. He kind of covers a lot of that, what they're really effectively used for and why. And so the first section, very, very, very clean, very helpful. The second section, using a variety of illustration types well. And I liked this because when we think of a sermon illustration, sometimes you just think, I went out, I got a newspaper clipping, it's outdated, I told this cheeky story, it doesn't relate to anything. Or maybe you think, I told a story about myself, or illustrate from the Bible, or whatever. He goes through different types of sermon illustrations and their pros and cons, how they can be used, and gives some instruction on this. Personal illustrations, fresh illustrations, this is those stories you go out and find. Biblical illustrations, hypothetical and historical illustrations, classic illustrations, fictional illustrations, and object lessons. And he has a section here that's really helpful. It's short, it's brief, just kind of where and how much those are being used in different contexts, kind of some survey information. Hey, I share all this to say, if you're thinking about your preaching, you want to do it more effectively, and one of those areas where you might be struggling is in the illustration, which, let's be honest, most of us could always use a little more help in illustrations. Maybe we're so good at them they overshadow the rest of the work we're doing, or maybe we just don't use them at all. This book is a helpful place for you to go. It's a helpful tool to start really thinking deeply and better about how to use an illustration in a sermon. It's called Illustrating Well, Preaching Sermons That Connect by Jim Willson.